All right, welcome back. You are listening to WQRI 88.3 FM, and this is Hope Pod Live. Next, we're going to have our SJN Story of the Week. Communities of Hope is one of the 8 newsrooms in the country selected for Solutions Journalism Network's Student Media Challenge. We are investigating solutions for the mental health challenge of incarcerated youth and youth within the foster care system. This week, we have Emily Cotter and Mario Montero of an organization called The Garden Time, which brings gardens to prison to make the rehabilitation system better for the inmates. Thank you both for being here. So welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Happy to be here. All right. So I'm going to have you both introduce yourself and just kind of explain a little bit about what you do for Garden Time. Emily, if you'd like to start.
Sure. My name is Emily Cotter, and I have been with Garden Time since 2018. I started as a volunteer in our prison gardens. And around that time was really when the organization was super small, no staff, barely any volunteers, and really starting to think about how we can continue to support our students as they prepared to leave incarceration. Students like Mario, who's been with Garden Time longer than me, but at that time, we were starting to prepare folks for reentering the community and reentering the workforce. And my background is in sustainable agriculture, farming, and I did a lot of work around drug policy advocacy and different, like running small business and stuff. So I came on kind of to help prepare folks to start developing those job skills, and it all kind of took off from there.
Amazing. Mario?
Yeah, I'm Mario Montero. I have been working with Garden Time on the outside for the past year. I got out July 2024. I took the Green Reentry job training, which was 8 weeks of paid job training in the green industry. But prior to that, I had been in the garden program in max and medium security for 12 years. That's how I met Kate and Vera, the other co-founder. But what I do now with Garden Time is part of the Canopy Crew. We are tree stewards. We plant water and maintain street trees in the city of Providence, which are historically low canopy neighborhoods. And I also, teach some advocacy during, the Green Reentry job training, which I just started doing this year.
Amazing. And then I don't know which one of you would like to start with this question, but if you could briefly describe the mission and goals of Garden Time.
Emily can probably recite that better than me, but I think the mission, at least from someone who was incarcerated, is to provide, the women and the men, just an opportunity to escape, the walls and the bars and the fences. I think the mission is to, humanize, us as individuals, allow us to focus on something other than, our worst mistakes. And then, also on the outside to provide people with the skills, to succeed in the green industry and connect us, hopefully to employment.
Very cool.
Yeah, I did have to bring a cheat sheet for the mission. But no, Mario hit it spot on, because at the core of what we do, really, it is about humanizing the situation at the ACI here in Rhode Island, and the therapeutic aspects of planting seeds, watching them grow, like touching grass, grounding yourself. That's really the heart of it, but it really has evolved into a real workforce training program, and that, as Mario described, it's kind of like a 3-pronged thing. So we've got, our in-prison programming, which is what started it all, and everything we've done since then was really a response to the needs of our students that we've grown to know and love over the past, over 10 years. And so we've got the Green Reentry job training program for when folks come out. That's like a landing spot, like Mario said. Amazing 8-week program, and we also now employ formerly incarcerated Rhode Islanders, So hopefully, I will probably be the only person that I've hired that's not one of our graduates, because, like Mario said, we have a lot of really important work to do in the city of Providence, which is in line with a lot of other nonprofit organizations that are working to expand tree canopy. And there's a real need for that work, and there's a real lack of folks to do that work. And so it really just fits nicely with our need to build supportive workforce training and employment opportunities for folks that have been through incarceration. So, yeah, it's about plants and trees and stuff, but it's really about the people. It's really about the pathway from incarceration back into the community in a more positive sort of. There's a big mindset change that comes with it.
Yeah, it's always amazing when you can see, real change in the community and actually helping people get back on their feet. What's been your experience with the justice system? What have you observed with the mental health care that's provided within the system, and have you seen any issues with that? You can, feel free to negate a question or kind of whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Well, my experience is 23 years. I was incarcerated at 17. Spent 3 years in Supermax. The high security was what they call it. I, did a lot of my time in Max. Yeah, it wasn't easy. The experience, it's tough. Prison's tough. It can be a place that makes people worse, which it does. And, it can be a place where people grow, and yeah, it was tough. I was sentenced to 2 consecutive life bids, and essentially I'm, supposed to be in there until I'm 50 or 60 years old. So I went in there with the mindset originally, like I didn't care. And at some point, like I said, I went to high security. I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. I need to change the things I'm doing. So I started doing that, and that involved me doing so many things, reconnecting with my family, just educating myself. A lot of my education came because of me. I wasn't allowed to take a lot of programs because of the time I was doing. But it was also, seeing, prison brings out the worst in people just because of the environment and the way that it's structured. And that's not just the people who are there because they made mistakes, but it's also the people who work there. It's the medical personnel, it's the correctional officers. It's just a horrible place where you see a lot of hopelessness, you see a lot of abuse. Us as inmates abusing each other, but also the guards abusing their power and authority. And the same thing with the medical personnel. They're not professionals. And in regards to, mental health, I think that was a big problem. I went in there, having experienced a lot of trauma the first 17 years of my life. Just going to prison at 17 was extremely traumatic. Though I did, commit a crime, I took someone's life, and, there has to be punishment for that. I'm very remorseful for it. Saying that, but there was a lot of trauma that I dealt with as a kid. A lot of us deal with it, and prison doesn't address that. It actually compounds it. And going in there young and having to deal with, seeing, people get, people fighting, people getting, assaulted with weapons, prison guards, treating people, like animals, can be tough. And mental health was non-existent, for many, many, many years. Most of the years I was in Max, I did not see any adequate mental health care. I think if you had went to a counselor and spoke about, some of the things that you were going through, maybe even said, I'm in a dark place right now, I feel like I might hurt myself. You go to segregation for that. They don't give you the proper help. So I think a lot of people have trust issues when it comes to speaking about them problems. But I did see when I went to Medium that, they tried at least one program specifically, which was a program that addressed people who are gang involved. They talked a lot about trauma. I was 36 when I took that program, and I think that was really the first time that I was able to hear and have deep conversations about trauma and what it meant and what it can do to you as a child, and if you don't address it, what it does to you as an adult. And, and just also like being part of Garden Time was a form of mental health and therapy, because you're outside of the, if you're in that garden in the prison, and Max, if you don't look up or look at them walls, you can be lost in there and forget that you're in a prison. So in a way, that is like it's therapeutic, and it can help address mental health. And then you have, Emily, Kate, and Vera, who come in and treat you with respect and treat you like a human being, and that goes a long way in an environment like prison.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. Emily, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. And I will just add to what he said. From my perspective, I have not been incarcerated. I've obviously spent a good amount of time here at the ACI here in Rhode Island with our students. And I think, of course, everything Mario said is spot on. And I just think that, we can clearly see that the justice system and the carceral system here in the United States and in Rhode Island is doing what it is designed to do. The dehumanization, the lack of adequate opportunities, that's all very common in this system. And I think Mario and programs like ours, and anybody who rehabilitates themselves while incarcerated is doing that basically in spite of the system, not because of it. They're doing that's like a self-driven process for the most part, from what we've seen. And as Mario said, there's so much context and trauma that goes into what brings folks into that system. And so it's like moving from one traumatic, maybe toxic environment to another differently and similarly traumatic and toxic culture in terms of correctional officers and the way, folks that are incarcerated are treated. And, one thing that Mario mentioned that I just wanted to highlight is, the use of segregation, or what's known as solitary confinement, which is still quite common in, many states, including Rhode Island, which really is, the definition of like mental torture. And so to use that as a response to mental health crises is obviously, in my opinion, backwards. But just from my perspective of working within the prison walls, I would just say, as a person that has led privileged life and stuff, it's quite a humbling experience. And a lot of our students and trainees that come out into our job training program have, like Mario, served longer sentences. And so they need a little bit of extra support. Some of our students haven't, technology has changed quite a bit since they went in, probably. And so there's a lot of catching up to do with that and everything else you can imagine that's changed so rapidly in the world out here. But we're like really well suited to provide that support. And also it's very clear to anybody who, whether they meet our students inside or outside when they get out, is that there's a really unique and incredible resiliency that comes with going through all of those experiences. And it's kind of it's fitting because of the somebody who's had those experiences could be like one of the best employees or business owners or contributors to the community that you could ever find. And so a lot of times we will bring employer partners or volunteers into our gardens to meet our students to really connect the dots of between the job training program and where we started. And people, including myself, will come out and be like, what? I would hire these folks in a minute. I would, trust them with my life. And, Mario and I have been friends for a long time. And so he, was one of the first people, that I felt like that about. And so, yeah, there's huge issues with mental health in the criminal justice system. And so it really takes a holistic approach to not only teaching technical skills, but really teaching getting to know yourself, understanding how your brain works, what your learning style is, your working style, and how you can work on a team with others, despite or because of all the experiences that you have, people have really unique skill sets, and our job is really just to help them understand that and figure out how to share it with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you both had already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but if you could talk a little bit more about the Green Reentry program and kind of what that looks like and how it works for both of you on both ends of this organization.
Yeah, I was fortunate to take it 30 days after I got out. It was 8 weeks of a mixture of classroom work, out in the field, hands-on, internships. It was, a combination of learning specifically about green industry jobs, pruning, tree cutting, composting, gardening, the cannabis industry. Also being exposed to potential employer partners who, we intern with, who also demonstrate, some of the skills required to work in their field. And that's also how I met the other person that I worked for. He's an employer partner with Garden Time. We did a demo on tree cutting and, running a chipper, and I work with him 2 days a week. It was great. We talked a lot also about, not just like, okay, garden and farm and plant the seed and it grows, but Stephanie is, and Munoz, I think, formerly incarcerated, teaches, along with Sada. They teach about environmental justice and a big reason of why we plant trees in inner city communities, and why these communities, like I said, historically don't have this investment. There's a lot of disinvestment in these communities. One of them happened to be Canopy, and what the benefits of having this canopy. There's so many. It's, mental health, nature, property value goes up. You're paying less on utility bills because, it's blocking the sun. But they really, delved into, the history of racism and the history of redlining and what it meant. A lot of us, I was fortunate enough to read a lot of the stuff in prison, but there's some people, this was the first time they heard about, redlining and what it meant to the community. And, okay, why does, South Providence not have as many, trees as, the east side or the Mount Hope section of Providence? And there's a reason for that, because of the people who live there, what they look like, the government, decided, and people know this, okay, we're not worthy, for this investment. Let's draw this red line around this community. Let's make sure that you live right next to all these industries that are going up, because so now you're dealing with pollution. But we learned a lot about that, and then it was a community. It's still a community of people. There's a few different nonprofits that work at our office, but it's really a community of people who care about the same things and who care about the success of everybody who goes through that job training. And we have once a month wellness sessions that Stephanie runs, which is essentially a time for graduates of the Green Reentry job training to go back and just talk and be around people who and it's only for the formerly incarcerated people, to go back and be around each other and talk and just decompress.
Yeah, it's really cool to be able to reconnect with people who have similar shared experiences and trauma, while you're also doing things to better yourself and your mental health. So really, really cool opportunity. I relate more to people that I've spent time in prison with than I'm more comfortable around them just because they know me, and this adjustment. Like Emily mentioned, the technology and how much of an adjustment it is for us. It's also it's tough sometimes adjusting to people because we're all different out here. And I spent 23 years in jail, and sometimes there's a facade that you put up, and there's things that you learn, and it takes a while to unlearn that. And society's different, so it is. You're right. Emily, anything to add?
I mean, and you both really nailed it too. It really is about the community, and we call it our family, because it's we just keep adding to it, and most folks stick around. And like you said, it's a lot of times you hear when someone's getting ready to get out of prison, it's a lot of folks are thinking about how to not end up in the same situation, right? So a lot of that's about changing your environment, and maybe it's about changing the people you're hanging around with, and that may influence you one way or the other. And so what we've really seen is like that being flipped to where we have that community where folks can feel understood, supported, and seen, like people getting out and from doing however many years and seeing Mario and Victor and Kyle and all these folks in our office that they've known for years, that they're friends with. So it feels safe, but it's also a completely new lens to be re-entering the community with, in terms of like that mindset change of like you mentioned, making a positive impact not only on yourself and your mental health, but your community. When we talk about planting trees, you know, there's a real like a very real impact for somebody who knows that they've had in the past a negative impact on their community in various ways, and they've served their time for that, and to be able to come back out and plant trees that are going to clean the air and provide shade for like your grandchildren and their children, because it's, you know, it takes a while, right? There's so many metaphors in the work that we do, but you know, it's expanding our time scale of the impact that we can have, and like Mario said, just to briefly mention about the training program, we do run it twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, and it's 8 weeks. We have about a dozen trainees each class, and so we've graduated, I believe, about 8 classes at this point, so almost 100 graduates, and so that our community is getting stronger all the time, and like Mario mentioned, it is a unique combination of those technical skills in the field training, and those what they might call soft skills, or like self-actualization, and the technology and stuff, and like even like talking about recycling and composting. But and like Mario also said, a lot of folks have, you know, not been in school for a very long time, if ever, apart from the classes, you know, and programming that they've taken inside, and maybe haven't really been part of a workplace, a traditional sort of workplace team in a long time, or maybe in their life, depending on what they did for work before. So we, you know, really understand that, and can meet people where they're at in terms of, you know, what their life experience has been. And then we've realized pretty quickly that for a lot of people, it was their first time graduating from anything when they graduated from our 8-week program. And so we have a really fun and special graduation ceremony, and we started getting caps, and, you know, we go all out, and it's a really important day for obviously not only the trainees, but everybody who's involved with the program and all of our partners. And just the last thing I'll say is that all of the employer partners that we work with obviously understand what we do, and so we can feel comfortable, and our trainees and graduates can feel comfortable knowing that we've got their back, and we would never send them somewhere where they wouldn't be supported and appreciated, you know, for who they are, and hopefully not judged for their past, which is obviously one of the main reasons that we exist, because if you have a felony conviction or a criminal record, that can obviously severely impact your ability to get a job and housing and all these things that are hard enough to get in this economy. So, yeah.
So could you see Garden Time's project being expanded into juvenile justice in Rhode Island, or even like any other, you know, adult prisons across the country?
Yeah.
This could be for either of you.
Yeah, I think it's common sense. I think for the longest time, my experience, the only job training that was available in a prison was Garden Time. Like, yeah, they came in maximum security as a garden for people who weren't going home originally, but you're learning skills there. We were learning how to communicate. We were learning them soft skills. We were learning about gardening and composting, what this tool was, what this tool's use was for. So that's job training. And for them to, you know, some years later, expanded to actually having a job training on the outside was perfect, and I think it could and should be implemented in prisons all across the country, because the green industry is growing. It's very important to care about your environment and your community. So yeah, definitely, I could see that happening.
Yeah, and it's one of those classic balance of expand, that sort of sustainable growth, or growing slowly. We think about, because we've expanded so much in the past year or two into, in terms of what the Canopy Crew does out in the community and the services that we provide and all that. But we, of course, are still a pretty small organization, and funding for the type of work that we do is even more limited now than it was before, in terms of what the federal government is willing to support, and thereby what the state has to offer in terms of funding as well. But I will say that there's definitely, of course, like Mario said, a need, and we see from work. We don't work a ton with the youth ourselves, but our partner organization, we share an office with Groundwork Rhode Island. They have a green team of youth, and so there are organizations who focus on the youth, and obviously that's super important, early intervention. And I'll say that we serve all sorts of folks, but we have a lot of experience and a specialty, I guess I would say, in serving folks that have done long sentences. And so, of course, better to catch people before they have to go through that experience to benefit from a program like ours. So hopefully there will be opportunities for programs like ours to do more early intervention. There are already, but we also have a ton of amazing graduates with a lot of skills and a lot of passion for serving their community. So I do expect that we'll see even more organizations and nonprofits and projects pop up from our amazing graduates. But I will say also that we used to have a garden in the women's facility, and we are going to be back at the women's facility, hopefully starting in the next year or so. And that's, again, just been a capacity issue for us to be able to do what we do well while growing at the rate that we are. And as far as around the country, I will just say that there are certainly other programs, as in Massachusetts, Oregon, California, Maine, but there are certainly not enough. We had a young woman come and intern with us last season conducting research about this type of program, and she was actually from Texas, and she had spent the previous summer in Oregon doing a similar internship, and I thought it was really disappointing, I guess, that she, coming from a state as big as Texas, when I can only imagine how many people are incarcerated there, that she had to go to both coasts of the country to find a program like ours. There should be 10 programs like ours in Texas alone, in my opinion. So there's certainly not enough, and I certainly see us growing, and I think that will be probably by the hand of a lot of our graduates.
Amazing. Yeah. So you mentioned everything that you guys do for the community, and of course it's amazing work, and we thank you for it. But how can the community help you and get involved in Garden Time?
I can take this one, Mario. Well, you can certainly, we have a website, www.gardentime.us, and so you can always go there. You can sign up for our newsletter, I guess. It's very rarely sent out, but if you want to be up to date on what we're working on, always something new, always expanding, and always looking for volunteers, and there's plenty of opportunities to donate either time or funds or supplies. We went on a camping trip this year, and so we're building up our camping supplies for our next camping trip. But like I mentioned before, funding is a serious issue now. I say all the time, everything we do is kind of like DEI. So we actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we were actually awarded a large grant that was then canceled by the federal government. So, it's really a struggle. It's really a struggle, because of course we picture ourselves being here forever, but it's, we have to make that happen ourselves, basically. So, certainly staying in touch and understanding what we're up to. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, but certainly always accepting donations, or if you know of any funding opportunities that would be a good fit for us, point us in that direction. And we have a community reentry garden at Open Doors on Plainfield Street. Of course, we're a little bit wrapping up the season at this point of the year, but normally you can find us there on Friday mornings at Open Doors on Plainfield Street in the summertime. And we do provide, we have free fresh organic produce that we offer to the community on those days. So, but it's just a great vibe, and you can come pick berries and just enjoy the space and the folks there. So, plenty of ways to get involved. I don't know, did I miss anything, Mario?
No, I think you hit everything.
If you want a tree planted in front of your house, or if you know of an organization that needs landscaping, we started doing landscaping for other nonprofits in our area this year and everything. So we're getting creative so that we can sustain ourselves for many, many years to come. And go to our website, gardentime.us, if you want to find out more.
Amazing. All right, we are wrapping up. You are listening to 88.3 FM, WQRI, Roger Williams University Student Radio in Bristol, Rhode Island, and this is Hope Pod Live. We are wrapping up here with Emily Cotter and Mario Montero of Garden Time. We want to thank you both for your time and talking to us and everything you do. So thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
This was fun.
We will be back next week with more news. We want to thank all of our partners and all of our amazing, amazing team who made this possible. And we will see you next week.